My name is Arpita Victor. I'm a research associate with the Electricity and Renewables Division here, and I'll be your MC for this session that's titled Green Leap Through Technology and Innovations. Before we commence with the session, a brief fire and safety announcement. TERI is a health and safety environment certified organization. In the case of any untoward incident like fire, evacuation is required. You're required to exit from this auditorium through the fire exit gates nearest to you without any panic. There are 7 gates to this auditorium, 4 on the ground floor, and there's 1 exit in the stage and 2 exits in the balcony, which are also the entrances to the balcony up there. In the case of a fire, fire marshals will take position in the aisles and exit gates to help you evacuate. Today's session is titled The Ideas Forum, Green Leap Through Technology and Innovations, and brings together leading minds in sustainability, clean technology, and policy to discuss pathways to a more sustainable future. The session will showcase innovative solutions, insights from industry leaders, and an exciting announcement on a key partnership that will drive impact in this space. The moderator for today's panel is Ms. Shweta Kothari, Senior Editor at the TV9 Network. Ma'am, would you please come on stage? Joining her on the panel are Ms. Prachi Shevgaonkar, founder of Cool the Globe. We have Ms. Chhaya Bhanti, founder of Vertiver. Mr. Himal Tewari, CHRO and Chief Sustainability and CSR at Tata Power. Dr. Dipankar Saharia, Senior Director at TERI. And Mr. Andrew Prag, who is the Managing Director of Policy at We Mean Business Coalition. Now, before we commence with today's panel, we have a short introductory video, post which, Shweta, the stage is yours.
The Green Leap represents a transformative approach to integrating technology and innovation. It is essential as the world faces mounting environmental challenges. Green technologies such as renewable energy, carbon capture, and nature-based solutions offer the potential to reduce environmental impact while driving economic growth. These technologies, however, compete with entrenched brown technologies that carry significant environmental and social costs, often excluded from market pricing. Without government support, private investors hesitate to back green technologies that are not yet cost competitive. To address these barriers, markets must transition from a purely market-driven model to one centered on innovation. Collaboration between businesses, universities, research centers, policymakers, and other stakeholders is key to accelerating the adoption of green technologies. This session will explore how technology and innovation can drive sustainable futures by identifying clean tech opportunities, fostering partnerships, and shaping policies to scale green technologies. This session will address critical questions, including identifying the most impactful clean tech areas, creating partnerships to drive market economies towards sustainability, and making green technologies accessible and affordable for everyone. Together, we can unlock the transformative potential of green technologies to create a sustainable and inclusive future. Join us as we explore strategies to foster innovation, build partnerships, and scale green technologies for a sustainable tomorrow.
We also have with us Mr. Srivatsan Iyer, Global CEO of Hero Future Energies.
All right, I think that's my cue to begin. A very good afternoon, everybody who's taken the time out to be with us here today. The world is at a very precarious stage. Never before at least up until 17th century, have we seen science so blatantly being disregarded? I believe perhaps it was in the 17th century when Galileo said that Earth is round and revolves around the sun, and he was punished for it. He later died, and I believe we are worse than where we were back in 17th century. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist here. I think most of you will agree that we are discarding science like we have never done before. Now, as I mentioned, we're in a similar place today. Global temperatures are rising, glaciers are melting, weather patterns are going haywire. And we're still contesting whether global warming is real or not. Now, world's largest economy has gone back to plastics. And the President of the United States says, drill, baby, drill. Well, drilling we are, and with that, we're also losing on to what can be a sustainable future for our families and kids tomorrow. Now, world's never been at this crucial juncture, and I hope it'll never be again, but this conversation, therefore, is all the more important. It's important because it comes at a time when theories that have been scientifically proven are now being contested. Science is being challenged, and therefore it stands to question that a group of well-meaning people are gathered here today to literally protect what we believe is going to be our future tomorrow. So it's incumbent upon us to perhaps unite and stand together to give our kids a better future. And I know you are not here to listen to me, so without further ado, I will quickly call upon my co-panelists, one after the other, to give their introductory remarks, post which we will have a conversation for about 25 minutes, and thereafter we will throw the floor open for questions. And so let me quickly call upon Mr. Srivatsan Iyer, Global CEO, Hero Futures Energy, to give his introductory remarks, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah. So thanks very much. Appreciate being part of this panel. As you pointed out, I think we are at a very interesting stage today in the world where we had made significant progress over 2 decades towards a more sustainable world, and there seems to be a bit of a pause and hopefully not a reversal. I think some of the positive signs that I still see coming out of this, notwithstanding the public comments around the world, is that a lot of the sustainable technologies meet 2 goals at the same time. A, they're sustainable, and B, they're a better economic solution to the alternatives that exist today. The biggest challenge that always existed for sustainability was you're greening, but you ask me to pay more than I normally would. And fortunately, several technologies have been incubated and adapted and advanced to a stage where you no longer have that dilemma. You don't have to make a choice between what's economically viable and what's more sustainable. And our companies in the renewable energy space, solar, wind, battery storage, etc., where today a combination of these technologies can actually provide renewable power almost 24 hours a day. Now it's either battery storage or other forms of storage. And so I actually look at this as a positive sign because the technological and cost advances continue in this space, where the cost of renewable energy is today by far the lowest cost of new power. So when you look at India, the India of 2050, almost 60% of it has not been built yet. In other words, India needs to develop that much more over the next 25 years. And we can do it the right way. You can do it using sustainable technologies. You can do it by being clean without having to think about is there an economic trade-off. So India certainly, and in many ways China as well, stand in the position where all of the new infra that needs to be built can be done the right way. The West has a different problem because they have to replace existing infra. It's not just a question of growth. It's getting rid of what they already have. And that's the dilemma they face, which is it already exists, the cost is fairly low, why do I have to invest brand new sustainable technologies to green what I already have? So there's a bit of a dichotomy where the developing world can do it the right way and the developed world has to find the right incentive structure to green their existing infrastructure.
Mr. Iyer, thank you very much for setting the ball rolling. Let me now call upon Chhaya Bhanti, founder Vertiver, to share her thoughts with the audience.
Thank you very much. Apologize for the voice in advance. So we work a lot in agriculture, and I think I will be speaking from that lens to say that we I think all of us know, are dealing with a soil emergency. Our lands are degraded, and we need to figure out systems and application of technology that will actually restore soil health so that everything that comes atop that, which is food security, et cetera, can be built. Now, we've seen in solar a very strange kind of maladaptation that we hadn't expected, which is that in many places where solar irrigation pumps have been made available, there's also been an unbelievable amount of water abstraction, which has led to even further lowering of the groundwater levels. So while the clean technology intention was absolutely on point, and we do need to move farmers away from diesel pumps, making sure that we understand the balance of what energy, food, and water nexus represents for us is extremely important. So when we talk about technology choices, we need to make sure that this nexus is very much considered when developing solutions. So we know that distributed renewable energies are extremely important for, mitigating the impacts of, enabling electricity use in health centers, for example, in rural areas. We also know that electricity can be very important for even soil health labs. One of the things we've seen in our work on the ground across Punjab, and specifically in UP, MP, Gujarat, is that testing of soil quality at the ground level is unreliable, doesn't happen, and when it does get to a lab, sometimes there are challenges even at that level. So there is energy access across these aspects that needs to be enabled, whether it's smart IoT devices that will help you test soil quality, or ensuring that the transportation of that soil to a lab is done in a manner in which you can get reliable results at the outcome. The other thing is that we need to ensure that post-harvest losses, which farmers face tremendously, are countered. And for that, we've seen a lot of companies coming up with these solar dryers at the ground level, enabling this for farmers where these losses can be reduced while you're adding value. So the only thing I'd like to say is that smart and compassionate technology choices, which are not just driven by a upstream sort of apply solar kind of a mindset, and understanding what the needs are on the ground and doing very, very customized solutions where the right balance of technology access and capacity buildings on the ground and actual access to resources that will help transfer the choice, the energy application into an actual feasible outcome for farmers and for our soil health is highly critical. Thanks.
Thank you, Chhaya. Mr. Andrew Prag, Managing Director of Policy, We Means Business Coalition, is also with us. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much. And firstly, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. It's a real pleasure to be on this panel. It's fascinating. I've been learning things already, so thank you for the invitation. So We Mean Business Coalition, we are an international network of businesses pushing for ambitious action on climate change. Founded about 10 years ago now by 7 existing business organizations who are really at the vanguard of businesses showing that they were positive about climate action and wanted the policies to help them go further in that transition. We now count a network of about 20,000 businesses around the world. And what we do is we provide guidance to those businesses in terms of how to move forward on their sustainability journey. We help them with standards. We help them with guidance on things like measuring their supply chain emissions. And then very importantly, we also help to bring the voices of those ambitious businesses into policy-making circles internationally to make sure that governments hear that business wants this transition. They want the policies to help them go faster, and they see it as a competitive advantage like that. So we've been working increasingly here in India. One example, we brought Indian voices, business voices to the G20 presidency when it was hosted here 2 years ago, really showing that Indian businesses wanted the G20 to deliver more ambitious outcomes on what all those G20 countries were saying about the energy transition. And we also work a lot with SMEs. So we have what we call the SME Climate Hub, which provides free access resources tailored to SMEs who want to play their part in climate change and sustainability, but maybe don't have the resources or know how to do it. So that's kind of an overview of what we do. On the technology question, and we, through our partners, really try to provide platforms and demand-side programs that allow businesses to step up and to use their purchasing power to help drive the technologies further up the supply chain. So, for example, through our partner, the Climate Group, we're involved in the RE100 program, which where corporates sign up to secure 100% renewable energy for their operations. It now counts 180 businesses operating here in India and many more around the world. So it's one example of how by providing a platform, companies sign up, they become competitive about it. That purchasing power then really helps to drive down costs and help with deployment of technologies. Just to zoom out a bit globally for a moment, we see that this destabilizing situation, which Ms. Kothari mentioned in her introduction, is very worrying. But at the same time, we take heart in seeing the incredible growth rates in deployment and investment in clean energy technologies around the world. So the extraordinary growth rates we see globally, the compound annual global growth rates of like 54% for batteries, 58% for electric vehicles, 29% for solar. These are incredible growth rates by any sector. So this is what really helps us be compelled that this energy transition is happening and accelerating, and the politics of the moment is hopefully just noise, and the economic case is kind of unstoppable. So we stand by that. But even with those growth rates, we're not going to get to where we need to get to achieve the net zero resilient society that we all want. So my former colleagues at the IEA have calculated, for example, that to achieve their scenario of net zero global emissions by 2050, only 35% of those emissions reductions can be achieved with technologies that are commercially available today at the global level. So that leaves a lot of room for really accelerating the innovation chain, both for brand new technologies, but also the early stage technologies which exist already but need accelerating. So for that to happen, the private sector has a huge role to play, but we really need the full kind of enabling ecosystem of policies to get there. There's good news in that we have seen globally energy spending on research and development increasing around the world. It was extraordinarily quite stagnant actually up until 2020, but now taking off. What's very striking when you look at the global numbers is a very small proportion of that spending is happening in emerging economies, so outside of China. If you look at, for example, all the money that was spent on battery storage investment in 2023, for every dollar that was spent in the advanced economies and China together, only 1 cent was invested in all the other emerging markets together. It's like a 1% rate that's going outside of the global north and China. So this is a big disparity that we need to work on, which requires much increased international cooperation. It requires not just sort of traditional elements of technology transfer, but also innovation cooperation to make sure that the industries are more homegrown and that we encourage those innovation ecosystems to develop. So to conclude, the private sector has a huge role to play here. There's a lot of policy measures that can be improved in all countries across the innovation chain, so not just the early stage, but right through the commercialization phases, and happy to get more into that in the discussion. But thank you again for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd now like to invite Prachi Shevgaonkar, founder Cool the Globe, to share her thoughts with us.
So I want to start by asking two very simple questions to everybody, okay? Can I get a show of hands? How many of you care about climate change? Of course, everybody does. That's why you're here. Now, the second, slightly more difficult question, how many of you are taking action on climate change in your own life? Oh, wow. Okay, so we have a very good audience here. So I like that all of us...
You're in TERI, so...
Of course, no surprises
there.
That's why I like being at WSDS. It's like our own beautiful planet. But once we step out of this planet, we realize that there are a lot of people who are very concerned about climate change, and yet they're not ready to take action. So Chhaya also works on behavioral change, right? So we did a quick survey on what is the blocker. Why are people not taking action yet? And we're not talking about people who don't believe in climate change. We're not talking about, our world leaders. We're talking about individuals like us who care deeply about this issue and yet are not taking action. And what we realized, very interestingly, is that a lot of people are waiting for a magic pill. They're waiting for a technological innovation, a scientific discovery to come in, swoop in like a superhero and save us from climate change. And that's why people are not taking action, because they think this is a problem that innovators and scientists are going to solve. But the truth is that people created this problem and only people like us have the power to solve it. So technology is not a replacement, it's only here to aid us in our journey of climate action. So what I really want to talk about is how technology can help scale individual action. And to help make the case for that, maybe I can tell you about my own journey of how technology helped me scale something I started at home. So when I was a young student, I remembered hearing a lot about climate change, and it bothered me, the role I was playing in this issue. And I went to my father and asked him, what can an ordinary girl like me do about a big problem like climate change? And we decided to start from our own home. We took up a challenge to reduce our own carbon footprint by 10% that year. But how? You know, which activities of mine are leading to most emissions? How can I reduce them? So I started doing this, started taking some quick actions. You know, my college was 10 kilometers away, so I started going by cycle, started recycling the plastic at home, took simple actions like this. But then I realized that if I had to keep doing this consistently, then I had to be able to measure the impact of my actions. And that's where technology came in. So I started researching on how do I quantify these small sustainable actions I'm taking. And as I started getting to know the CO2 emissions I'm saving, a very interesting thing happened. First one was that I began to enjoy it. You know, it almost became like a fun game we were playing at home. And it felt good that at least at my own level, I was doing something. And then perhaps because I was enjoying it so much, a lot of other people around me, people like you came to me and said, you know, you're doing something interesting and we would like to join you in this quest. And that's really when I started thinking, how can I start this individual quest I began at home and get global citizens like you on it with me? And that's really a problem that technology helped me solve. So we decided to build an app which would unite people like you and I to start taking climate action in our own homes. We named this Cool the Globe. So the app would invite a person to come in and give them a target to reduce their own carbon footprint that month. And then it show hundreds of simple day-to-day climate actions we would take and track the emissions we are saving with each action. Now we launched the beta of this app, and I remember a 6th grader from a small town in Maharashtra called me and said, you know, I've been taking actions on Cool the Globe app, but I keep thinking, what difference can one person make? We believe that when a lot of people like us come together, then our collective impact can be very big. So we decided to keep a global meter on the homepage of our platform, which would track in real time the emissions saved by all users combined, and that's the power of collective action. So what I realized is, this is something I started at my own home. When I decided to take individual action, technology was not involved. But when I wanted to scale that action, when I wanted to involve other people like you on it, this is something that technology helped me do. So I began this journey as a young girl who wanted to do something about climate change. Today, as I speak to you, we have citizens like you coming together on Cool the Globe app from 150 countries who've all collectively recorded saving 6.5 million kilograms of carbon emissions, and this is just the beginning. We also think, can individual action, when coupled with technology, help create a ripple effect for even larger systemic change? So a good example of that is something that we're doing at Tata Power. So Himal sir is here, and he'll speak a little more about that in a little bit. But in Tata Power, we did something interesting. We started an initiative called Climate Crew, which is encouraging employees to start taking climate actions in their day-to-day life and work. So when we started this last year, I think we had about 3 members in Climate Crew. One was Himal sir, so he heads sustainability, so he had to be there. We had Shweta, who's in the audience, and we had our MD sir. And then by now, it's been like a year and a half that we've launched this. We have 10,000 employees who've become a part of Climate Crew now, who are all taking climate action at work. And you know what we realize so we're tracking the collective climate impact of all employees together. We are giving recognition to employees who are taking most sustainable actions. So a platform is helping us do that. So this is how technology can unite employees, citizens to make climate action a part of their life and work. What we realized is when employees started taking climate action, then they also became more involved and invested in what the organization was doing. So employees would come and say, what are the sustainability initiatives we are taking? How can I be involved in this? Because we don't want climate action to be something that's just a checkbox at the leadership level. We want every single employee to be a part of this. So technology can even help us create a movement, a larger ripple effect for change. At the beginning of my journey, I read that it's going to take a miracle to avoid the worst effects of climate change. And when we did this survey, I realized that this is what most people are waiting for. Climate change seems like such a grim reality that we're waiting for a miracle. But the truth is that imaginary technological discovery, scientific discovery is not the miracle that we're looking for. The miracle starts in our own homes, in our own actions, and technology will help us scale it.
Thank you very much, Prachi. I'm particularly keen and looking forward to speaking with you during the course of our interaction, but let's move on. Let me now call on Dr. Dipankar Saharia, Senior Director at TERI, to address the audience.
Thank you, Shweta. So in TERI, I'm working for a program which is called Social Transformation and Strategic Alliance. The whole part of this program is to work for transforming the society, to work with the communities, to go there and understand the issues. So as Prachi have already asked, everybody knows climate change is happening, everybody is taking action, but how many of those actions are green actions? We are doing our own, but how many of you have, can I just again ask, how many of you have used green innovation technologies? Maybe EVs are there, other than that.
So apart from EVs, I believe solar panels?
Yeah, solar panels, okay.
Any green tech? Show of hands, please.
Yeah, so there are very few, but as we know, the climate change has affected all of us, all ecosystems. We have seen resource depletion, we have accidentally used our resources, mineral resources, and the waste that we are generating. Extensive plastic waste that have filled up everything that is possible and in our oceans. So we need to take action. So what kind of thing? We know that we are talking about innovations and the way that we have the green tax today, but the issue is about how can you accelerate the adaptation of these technologies? As you have seen, the numbers are very less. It's here. How can we scale up the technologies? How can we make them affordable so that it can be taken by most of us? And how are they accessible? Are we aware of those technologies? And how can it be maximized adaptation along all rural and the industries? So it's a very important part because green technology is not about only decreasing our carbon footprint or environmental footprint. It is about enhancing our efficiency, improving the quality of life, and our economic opportunities. So all are coming together. But I would rather go, understand the rural part of India. 65% of our population overall is in the rural areas. And 80% in the northeastern region are in the rural areas. How are they getting affected due to the changes, and how can they adopt the new technologies that are available? Especially we are dependent on agriculture. So sustainable agriculture could come forward for this, and the organic farming, the natural farming, the ecotourism, the composting part. So all these are simple technologies, but technologies also enhance our employment opportunities in the rural areas. So there are many points that need to be discussed about the accessibility. How can the rural people get access to the right technologies that are available in the national level or in the international level? Are there enough policy to help them out? How would the private investors and the industry come forward to help it out? Are the government having enough policies to support them and long-term policies? And even if I talk about the rural areas, the kind of products that would come from these technologies, or how can that be marketed? Do the rural people have the market access? How can all this be done in a way that it's sustainable? So there are many things that we really need to take up, and there are lot of opportunities that we see in the green tech, and that is the future, because we want everything to be done in a very sustainable way. And one of the drivers that I also like to talk about is India's overall target of achieving 500 gigawatt of non-fossilized energy by 2030. And out of that, about 180 of solar that we are trying to achieve, even more than that. And by 2047, it's about 1,800 gigawatts that we are targeting. So all these are drivers, because ultimately renewable energy, more or less, it is based on solar and the wind, the biomass, the biogas, and the other natural sustainable agriculture practices that we can really execute in the rural areas. So we have to see the drivers. We have to see that we have to also de-risk the entire the chain of things. Because if somebody is coming and coming up in any innovative product or innovation of green tech, he has to be supported in the right way, because de-risking would be a great help for taking forward, along with the investment of private sectors. So these are my initial points, Shweta. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Saharia, thank you. And moving on, let me now ask Mr. Himal Tewari, CHRO, Chief Sustainability and CSR at Tata Power Company, to share his thoughts with the audience.
Thank you, Shweta. And is this working? Yeah, it's working. So, I think, thank you, everybody. I think wonderful perspectives already. Thank you, Prachi. Incidentally, Prachi is our sustainability brand ambassador. Thank you for your leadership. A lot of work that we're doing gets influence, and you're driving that. I think one needs to take a lens of the systemic change, and I think context is important. And I think we need to take it as a lens of the nation, right? And I think in a lot of ways, we have done the right things already. Yeah, so I think we take in spite of the anti-narrative going globally, we have done largely good things already. I think take the positive lens to it. Now, from a systemic level, technology is absolutely important. Andrew talked about it, that even if you're taking the net zero aspirations, large parts of the ambition goals that we've taken we will not be able to achieve it with the existing technology. Now, that's a clear call for action for all of us. So, needless to say, technology and innovation are a core part of our journey. Needless to say that. Second part is, I think we need to look at it from a systemic lens of both the demand and supply. Now, first, for the energy transition to happen, the thing of the demand side, which is the transmission and distribution elements. Look, we underestimate that we need to still distribute energy to the last mile, and we have a reality of the country today. Somebody talked about the entire aspect of I'm sure TERI has been founded on this foundational elements of what is energy poverty, and we need to address it. And this is there's no one road to heaven. So solar cannot do it, wind cannot do it, battery cannot do it. We need to look at the systemic level. We'll have to integrate nuclear in it. We have to integrate pump storage in it. We have to integrate also the lessening of the impact of the brown technologies till the time they exist. This is reality today. Even in the new government paper, they are talking about 80 gigawatts of thermal capacity being taught, because we cannot balance the grid. Because for us to enable development and growth at the same time, we require this power for the country. Now, having said that, we need to manage that transition to minimize that till the time we have browning for balancing the grid and things like that. That's one part of this, is the business value chain. Now there is this entire piece of how do we integrate into the value chain of the country and the society at large. The work that we will have to do is to co-create how do we create this entire action plan for engaging with one part what Prachi has mentioned is call to action at the individual level. How are we going to do that? How are we going to engage with the society which is going to be affected by it? It calls for biodiversity actions, it's called for water actions, it's called for soil actions, it's called for actions. These are all integrated. So in my view, I think it is absolutely the global #1 problem to solve. And that has to be addressed by all of us. We as an integrated energy company are at the heart of solving this. And which is where we say that, look, energy access, affordable, clean energy and abundant energy is fundamental to development of this country, fundamental to the prosperity of this country, and in a systemic, sustainable way. The good news is that a large parts of the technology existing has proved its worth commercially as well today. So as Shri was saying, that we don't have to create a business case for some of those technologies already. The thing is to broad base it and to make sure that what we have been able to achieve, we can be able to achieve in other aspects as well.
Mr. Tewari, thank you very much. Yeah, let's do that. Loud round of applause, please. Thank you. And I think we'll begin a discussion now for the next 20, 25 minutes that I have all of you. I think some of the existing challenges that you talked about, your businesses, your call to action. I want to begin with you, Mr. Tewari. You mentioned something very interesting, and you mentioned that India is already on the right path when it comes to being energy sustainable. What we cannot live with is energy poverty. We want clean energy, we want abundant energy, and we have enough and more resources, and I think we have the right spirit and the right policy action. So what, according to you, are the biggest challenges right now that exist for India specifically when it comes to energy security, renewable energy, and regardless of what's happening all around the world, I think our path to sustainability, a roadmap has been laid out by the central government. What are the existing impediments and challenges?
I think, look, two, three things come up for me. One, of course, is that we will have to choose the path of affordable energy, and we have to take the lens of saying that, look, how can we enable that to be accessed for everybody? So I think that is point #1. Point #2 is that, look, still there are aspects that we are not able to provide it to the last mile. So we do have interim solutions. We do talk about microgrids. We talk about, today there is a huge ambitious plan of the PMSGY, the Prime Minister Surya Ghar Yojana, which is they are talking about solarization and distributed electricity at the last mile. And in large parts, it is about if you ask today, the subsidy elements between the central and some state governments, it is subsidized as has a 70 to 73%. So if you spend 100 rupees, 73 rupees is funded by the government. Now these are extremely progressive steps. Now the point today in the short term for us is execution. I think the policy framework is there. The challenge that now we need to look at it is from a medium to long term point of view, where are we headed from here? The integrated solution for us has to come along, as I said in my opening thing, is nuclear, as well as the integrated thing about how are we looking at other new energies, including offshore. Because we will be the biggest energy consumers in the world. We still, per capita consumption is still on the lower side. If we have the Prime Minister's vision to become a developed country, our per capita energy consumption has to increase, and hence we need to increase those. But as I said, we have to integrate the other challenges. How do we do it in a sustainable fashion? How do we integrate everybody in terms of emissions, in terms of water, in terms of soil, in terms of agri, and in terms of livelihoods?
Chhaya, there was a time when being sustainable was imperative, and now we are at a stage where it's woke and fashionable, and also the conversations that I'm having literally with Gen Zs and the younger generation is, we don't have the time, we don't have the energy, and why should we do anything if at all? As part of Vertiver, people who operate on behavioral social changes, what sort of narratives are you looking around you when it comes to implementing sustainable goals? What are the most important behavioral changes that one really needs to inculcate, and where should it start? Should it start at home? Should it start in universities? How do we make people aware of the existing threats and challenges?
you. So here I will speak to what actually Himalji just spoke about, the idea of integrated action, because when we talk about behavior change, sometimes we only refer to us as individual consumers. But behavior change is actually a pretty vast idea in which we are looking at the change in behavioral thinking of the corporate, of a policymaker, of a farmer, of a consumer. So, I mean, because I come from the lens of looking at the greatest crises that India faces, because we work a lot on the ground in agriculture, a lot of what it is we have a water crisis, we have a soil crisis, we have a micronutrient crisis, we have an air pollution crisis, right? And now, what role does energy play in this is really what we have to look at. So, we know that if we could change farmer behavior towards reducing the pumping of water, and bring it to an optimal use, we would be securing, climate resilience, essentially, right? We would be securing the availability of water. But then we again also know that if you give them solar irrigation pumps, they will still need to have the application. They can't do flood irrigation along with solar panels, because then the problem is, it contradicts itself. You've made the energy available, but now they're wasting water as a result, right? So now you have to come in at that level. But now let's say that we have moved them from paddy to millets. Now we have a consumer behavior problem, because yes, you're using less energy, but now you're not being able to convince consumers to consume anything other than maybe packaged millet chips. How many of us are actually including one diet of millets in a week in our diets? Because that's an energy, that's a very major issue, energy saving and water saving issue. So if you work through the layers, you also see that the energy issue is so related to the major crises that we see, where you make energy available without thinking of its maladaptation. That's where you have to actually plan for all the others. I'll give you an example. I went to UP and I saw a great installation of a biogas unit. Nowadays, biogas is obviously a fantastic technology, because you can actually use a lot of the cattle biomass, turn it into a slurry, which is great for your soil, but also great for farmers. Now they had all this gas available, but they didn't know what to do with it, because they had more gas than they'd ever been available. Now they have the slurry, but the gas is being wasted. And they told us, can you train us to make something so that we can actually do something with this gas? So a lot of the challenges of behavior change is that sometimes we look at a very top-down demand, we need to implement energy, but we need to see what's actually happening at the ground level with that energy. Another example is, let's say, the Govardhan scheme. The idea is the government is, making a lot of these large, these compressed biogas plants available in lieu of the fact that the slurry would be available to the farmers to improve their soil health. But a lot of the times the gas revenue is enough that the slurry never reaches the farmer. There's a subsidized plant that's being given, while the gas itself is so profitable that the slurry, which is really needed to address the soil emergency, is never reaching there. So what you have is a very integrated issue, and what we really need to do when we think of behavior change is to make sure we understand the system and all the key roles of each actor within the system. I myself have solar panels in my house, so certainly I'm very, very on board with individual action in terms of it, but I don't think that's enough, because we have a major water crisis, we have a major air pollution crisis. So for example, instead of converting a piece of agricultural land into a solar field, go to your mine sites that the land is not okay, and that's where you implement solar instead of doing it in an agriculture field. So there are so many ways of thinking about it to actually drive behavior change, which is not just the adoption of the technology, it is actually thinking about, like what I said, food, energy, water nexus, and that's where we have to change the behavior.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Iyer, you talked about how when it comes to developing versus developed economies, there is a conundrum. While it is difficult for developed economies to turn to green tech easily, we have an advantage, because we're still setting things in motion, in process. What, according to you, are the biggest advantages that India has right now when it comes to adopting green tech? Where do you think is an opportunity that is still not being exploited to its full potential?
Yeah, before I get to that, I think a couple of themes that other speakers spoke about resonated really well. One is, everybody looks for a silver bullet. It doesn't exist. It is an all solution. It's not or. And the other is, today, if every individual magically, like Prachi said, turned a switch on and said, I'm going to be more sustainable, energy demand can go down by roughly 10 to 12%. Right? So the impact of that is enormous. And we don't think about demand management as a solution to sustainability. We keep looking at the supply side. So I think that's a couple of points I want to make. Going back to why India is in such an advantaged position, one is, as I said, 75% of India still needs to be built. All the technologies that exist to decarbonize electricity exist today. So we are not looking to necessarily create anything new for the narrow segment of just, say, electric power. And Himal talked about power has to be affordable, it has to be available and reliable, and it has to be sustainable. The availability, reliability needs a little bit of work for renewable energy, and I think that's a work in progress. The affordability keeps improving. For example, 10 years back, solar module efficiencies were low 20%, right? You'd be happy with 2021. Today, the new technologies that are close to commercialization are close to 30%. So we're talking about a 50% improvement in efficiency, which directly translates to lower cost. So we're going to get to the affordability piece real soon. It's a reliability piece that I think the whole ecosystem is working on. And one mindset that we observe, and even given our company and our industry, is we still tend to think of renewable energy as a thermal power plants of 4 gigawatt plants. You build it in one part of Bihar, have these enormous transmission networks, take it to the rest of the country. We are starting to think about renewable energy the same way. And perhaps renewable energy has a different facet to it, which is distributed. Right? Microgrids, even at the individual level, at the community level, at the village level, at the town level. The advantage of renewable energy is it is modular. You can build it at a small scale. A village can't build its own thermal power plant. The economics just don't exist. The challenge for the entire ecosystem, government, private sector, is to think about what is the best overall solution. Do I need to build thousands and thousands of kilometers of massive, expensive transmission lines from Rajasthan, Gujarat to the rest of the country? Agreed, I need to do some of that, but can I also develop microgrids at a level where people are close to being self-sufficient, but requires a different investment in grid stability? In other words, we can't have a million people drawing from the grid, feeding back into the grid, and powering their own homes without having the right technology, primarily software and some hardware, to manage the grid stability. Those technologies are evolving really, really rapidly. So India is at a wonderful position where it can take this and approach, build massive renewable energy capacity where it makes sense, and start to incentivize microgrids and allow individual consumers to generate their own power and connect to the grid at the same time. I think that's it on the electricity part, and hopefully that the new technologies will get us where we can supply reliable 24-hour power. The third piece is the most difficult, which is the hard-to-abate sectors. EVs work great for two-wheelers and four-wheelers when you're driving within cities. It's not there for trucks yet. And today, trucks, buses, and ships and planes are an integral part of our economy. Those need a different solution. Those technologies are still early stage. Those can be derived eventually from renewable energy when you convert them, for example, to hydrogen and derivatives and so on. So it is possible to decarbonize all of those, including hard-to-abate sectors, but that's where the government needs to step in, work with the private sector to make sure that they create the right structure to allow those technologies to be developed, tested, and then scaled up. And I think if that happens, we'll get all three areas of, I think, energy usage in society.
You know, Mr. Iyer, with regards to EVs, and you talked about how we don't have commercial viability for EVs just as yet. When it comes to personal use as well, I mean, look at the EV penetration in India today. We are targeting 30% by 2030. We're barely at about 10 to 12% right now. Very hard to meet targets. So I believe also at a use level, and at an individual level, there has to be more merit in adopting green tech. And right now, people are not seeing that.
Absolutely. In fact, I belong to a group where there's advocates of public transportation, which has a much lower carbon footprint per individual than the way we see India today, right? In fact, if you were to migrate more to public transportation and clear the roads for bicycles, much like Europe has done, I think you'd see a massive impact in overall footprint of society. So That
I'm
is
not
a
sure
solution
though.
we're not considering.
I'm not sure though India's climatic conditions will allow you to bicycle either in winters or in summers, but I think that's a good point there, absolutely. I want to come to you at this point, Prachi. You're doing something very cool. You're engaging with young people, you are driving behavioral changes, you're making it accessible for people to use tech, use your platform to make your voices heard. At this point in time, I think the big question that a lot of youngsters are also facing it is that how should we really bring about a change, even if we care, without us costing too much time or energy or resources? How do you make green tech more accessible? In your opinion, what are the impediments right now to making green tech more accessible and platforms such as yours more accessible to people?
Absolutely. So I think I always want to tell people that the biggest barrier we have to adopting to climate action is that we think now we're going to have to change our life completely. And nobody is ready to do that. It's understandable. You know, we are comfortable. It's tough. And not everyone can change their life completely, and we don't have to either. There's a scenario in which to reach net zero, like you said, we have to do everything. There's no either or. And some of it will happen from renewables, some of it will happen from energy efficiency. 7% of that burden lies on individual actions. So that means each one of us, even if we just pledge to reduce our footprint by 10% every year, that should be enough. That means taking a couple of climate actions every month, every week. So I think what green tech helps individuals do is when they started coming on our app and they started taking climate action, they would come to you and say, okay, we're doing this, but some of this is still difficult. Can you show us how climate action can become easy for us? On the other hand, there's so many sustainable startups, green products, who are here to do just that, who are here to help make our sustainability journey easy. They also came to me and said, you know, you have a community of climate conscious citizens. Can you showcase our products for them? So this is what we're wanting to do now. What we're doing now is we're also showing individuals other eco-friendly projects that they can be a part of. The idea is to reduce by 10%, and the rest they can also offset with environmental projects, just the way organizations can offset. If I take a flight to come here, I can offset that. We heard the news about a young couple who offset their daughter's entire life, and she became world's first carbon neutral baby. So there are things like that that are possible that make this journey slightly smoother for us. I like to say that sustainability...
Sorry, can you give us some examples? What can you do today to really offset your transport to, let's say, New Delhi from a certain place that you've traveled, you know, in an airplane? Yeah. What can you do in the next 10 days that will offset that carbon emission?
So whatever action you take, the first step is to reduce 10% of that with your own actions. So a couple of things is, how many of us are non-vegetarians here? Can I? Okay, so if you promise me today that you won't eat meat for lunch today, how many of us can promise that?
I don't see any hands. One hand.
Okay, either today or maybe this week. Some week when your grandmother is anyway telling you this week is not the best.
Hands.
Yeah, the vegetarians, okay. So if I don't eat chicken for the next 2 weeks, for example, I will reduce 4 kg of emissions. So the idea is when I've come to this event, I calculate my event footprint. And then I find different actions I can take here that will reduce that. At least by 10%. So I walk to the venue, for example. We don't have, WSDS is keeping us very busy, so it's not like we have time to go shopping in Sarojini Market. So we shopped less this trip. So even if I didn't shop, that's still reducing carbon emissions. And that's an easy way. So what I want to say is think of one climate action in this conference that seems super easy for you to do. And that climate action can look different for different people. So my 3-year-old niece is here, for example. She's also already taking climate action, which is she's using reusable diapers. She's in the hall today with us. I'm surprised she's so quiet. But she took 2 climate actions in the first 3 years of her age. She used reusable diapers, and she learned to potty train early. So now she doesn't use diapers at all. And we calculated in the first 3 years of her life, she saved about 20 kilograms of carbon emissions by doing this, which even her weight is not that much right now. So you take a climate action that seems super easy to do. Then the next step is you make it fun. Because real sustainability is not a burden. It's not difficult. It only adds value to your life. So think about the larger goals in your life. If your goal is to be fit this year, then you can start walking more, start cycling more. If your goal is to save money, then you can shop less. If your goal is to spend time with family, then you can do chores together instead of using high energy intensive appliances. So think of your larger goals in life. Decide a climate action that aligns with that goal and make it fun. Now, once you've made it fun, then using technology, track the carbon emissions you're saving. Because when you realize that by doing this, I saved these many kilograms of carbon emissions, it will feel good. And then the fourth and the most important thing you do is you show off. You tell 10 other people about this one climate action you've taken. You tell 10 other delegates about how you made this year's World Sustainable Development Summit sustainable in your own life. And you'll see how your action creates a ripple effect for larger change and creates a movement. So I think if we just start doing these 4 things in our own lives from today, I think in our own way, we would have made climate action more accessible.
Thank you very much. Let's give it to the baby. There she is on the right.
Yeah, she's also clapping.
She's also clapping for herself. Mr. Andrew Prag, I think the entirety of the conversation has also been around how without private sector participation, none of these climate action goals can be realized anytime soon. In your assessment, what are the areas of clean tech that have the most potential for the private sector to really participate?
Sure, thank you. And maybe just before I come to that, on this question of food, it's a pleasure to be visiting a country where the vegetarian food is so good. I live in France where the food is good, but the vegetarian options are still now hard to come by really good ones. So that's really a pleasure. And also, before I come to your excellent question, just reflecting on this point of how to engage people, maybe the sound sounds a bit funny, maybe it's better like this. And in the current political context, we're also working with businesses about this kind of issue, the language that we use, how we engage businesses to really be maintaining, furthering their action, becoming more ambitious, and reacting to the political context. So just really ramming home the points about the business case, the economic transition, about the benefits for business and energy security, about the need to be a more resilient business with climate impact starting to hit supply chains, and really make material impact. So it's, we're also thinking about how to engage people, but at the business level. But to turn to your question about which areas of clean tech is the private sector most impactful, I think when I was reflecting on this, I think the question is, if the policy frameworks are right, which clean tech sectors is the private sector not going to be impactful? And the answer is probably none. It's because it's really, if the framework is set to deliver both the innovation and the deployments, and to drive that investment, then we really need the private sector across all sectors. So, ranging from, of course, we hear a lot about renewable energy adoption at the moment, the application of storage to renewables, extraordinary developments there across the private sector. Energy efficiency, also, a real no-brainer for companies with even a medium-term perspective on the payback. And we see companies around the world developing that. For example, the Climate Group's Energy Performance 100 initiative. You see companies just committing to fairly economic sense energy efficiency initiatives, saving 400 million tons of CO2, saving $140 million for those companies. So basically right across the board, including into the hard to abate sectors, which were mentioned earlier as being so difficult. We see great progress there with things like the Steel Zero and Concrete Zero initiatives of companies pledging together to increase the demand potential and to help bring those plants to this kind of first of a kind of the new technologies to get to their investment decision through those kind of initiatives. But it is really about making the policy framework work. And that it has to be seen when we're talking about new technologies right across the innovation cycle. So again, drawing on where I used to work at the Iyer, there's quite a clear kind of 4 steps of that cycle that governments have to think about as they orient the policies in a way that will get more attention from the private sector. So the first is really driving that early stage innovation, the research and development spending, both public sector, but also encouraging the private sector to invest in that upper stage sort of labs level development. And India still has a relatively low percentage of GDP committed to that research and development, less than 1%, of which a relatively low percentage of that 1% is private sector. So there's more that can be done, I think, in that area. And focus on the R&D spending, but innovation is really not just about the R&D, and that's really important to bring forward. So the second area that policy has to focus on to really get better private sector engagement in new technologies is in the, what you might call the knowledge ecosystem. So making sure that there is free flow of information between universities and private sector, both within countries and also internationally, to make sure that the patent systems are working well, and that there's a good recognition of intellectual property and so on. Then the third area is what you might call market pull, so just making sure that the incentives are set right and that the demand is being created. So big role for the government to actually create demand for new products by public procurement and just setting criteria for public projects that they want to see, for example, low carbon cement being used up to a certain percentage, and then that percentage rises in public contracts so that there's a very clear public demand coming to show the market that if investments are made in these technologies, the demand will come through. And then part of that market pull is, of course, setting the incentives right to make investments make sense and sort of tilting the playing field in the right direction. We often hear about leveling the playing field in this area, and I always try to insist that the playing field is never really level. It's the government's decision to tilt the playing field in the direction that is better for society in the long term, including this example by shifting the incentives from fossil fuels towards clean solutions. And actually, I like to illustrate this with a cricketing analogy, because I feel that you can't come to India and not talk about cricket at least once. And this is the Lord's cricket ground in my birth country in the UK, in London, which considered some cases as the birthplace of cricket and very esteemed international playing field. It's famously not level. There's a slope, and teams choose strategically which bowlers they're going to send going down the hill or up the hill. And I like to point this out to people that it's even their famous international sports ground, the playing field is not level. So it's the same in the international economy. Governments choose to tilt the playing field and then play strategically on that field. And then the last area of these four sort of policy structures which are so important to get this whole innovation cycle going is on the kind of social political side, really making sure that there are structures in place to drive the skills supply that, as companies scale up these technologies, the demand growth or the growth of the production can outstrip the skills available in the market. So a big push from government together with the private sector to make sure that the skills development is happening, that people are being trained. And then the communications, making sure that people are ready, general public, ready to adopt these technologies and understand that an electric vehicle is not a difficult thing to drive, and these kind of elements. So they're right across the innovation. Well, we have to think about innovation well beyond just the development side, and really all these four areas that can help the private sector to act impactfully across all of these clean tech areas. And then lastly, I just say there's within that an overarching element of public-private collaboration that's essential. So well-designed public-private partnerships for big infrastructure projects in clean technology, and then there's great examples in India around how the mega solar parks have been developed with the public investment in the underlying infrastructure, making it much easier and de-risking the investments of the private sector to deliver the actual solar elements of it. And then lastly, not just the public-private collaboration, but the kind of private-private collaboration, and I come back to these initiatives that we support a lot as our coalition on providing the platforms for companies to come together. As I said, the concrete zero, the steel zero elements, things like the First Movers Coalition, which was founded by the World Economic Forum, but which is really there to use this demand signal to allow companies that want to lead as purchasers to come together and make a sort of unmissable demand signal that helps to drive the market and show companies that it is worth making these big investments in these early stage, first-of-a-kind plants, because the demand will be there. So, yeah, bit of a long answer to your question, but I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And so I think perhaps my last question here to Dr. Saharia. Dr. Saharia, how do we make green technology more cost competitive? I think it's the fact that we've talked about accessibility, we've talked about the need to make behavioral changes among consumers, but at the same time, you have to make green tech cost competitive for the private sector. So there is an incentive there to implement it, to use it and scale it. How do we really go about doing that?
Thank you, Shweta. I think the most important challenge that we have is about, the cost part, which you have rightly said about, bringing down the cost. Therefore, it is not affordable, and also the accessible part of it, especially if you see, if I talk about 65% of the population, the cost part is the main part for which the green techs are generally not being bought for their use, or kind of growth that is required in this particular sector. As far as the cost is concerned, I think the scaling up the production is the main way that you can bring down cost. That is the general way that you bring down cost. But along with that, there has to be a demand. So how to create the demand and also increase the production? I think it has to start from the very beginning. The startups, the innovators, they have to be rightly provided the finance, the funds by the government, by the private sector, by the financial institutions, so that they are motivated, and along with them a long-term policy support, so that when the technologies are developed with the cost that is not high, then that is one of the way forward. Then the other part that would come immediately is about how to scale up these technologies at the industrial level, or the way to reach out to maximum. The technologies are very simple. It's not about very complicated. We are talking about renewable energy. We are talking about water access. We are talking about circular economy. All the green technologies that are available. We are talking about EVs. So it is all about scaling up the production, having the right finance part in play, and also de-risking it. I think that is one of the major points. You have to de-risk the entire chain. Therefore, that is what the cost part would come, and in a long-term policy and the infrastructure support that the government has to provide. I think the first thing, I think the government has a major role, along with a strong collaboration that is required in terms of putting up demonstration projects, where people would really want to come and see, learn, and then it replicates. And once it replicates about the kind of benefits, kind of environmental benefits, kind of livelihood benefits that you get, it would automatically scale up, and the cost would at the same time go down. So there are one part that we are missing as a country as a whole is about the collaboration of the industry with the academia. It's only happening with the big scientific institutions, at IIT level or one or two private. But more collaboration is required so that the technologies that are green and being developed by the academia, by the research institutes, are taken forward by the necessary support that is required from the government, the initial collaboration, partnership, the support, the financing part, and also one problem that I see when we implement green projects in the rural areas is about the co-finance or the beneficiary part that comes down from the beneficiaries. They don't have that part also. It's about 10-20% of the total cost of any system that are green. Suppose we are putting a handloom that has a green part in it, where you are supporting it by battery that comes from solar. But that 10% is not available. So how to provide the right finance to that beneficiary to get over this? So once that goes on, it will again scale up. And one point, there is one important point is this, that we really have to reach out to the last person, the vulnerable groups that are really affected by the climate change that is happening. How to reach them is one of the challenges, and they are the ones that needs the maximum support. So I think we all have a major role. The partnership that the whole theme is about this time WSDS. I think the partnership, the collaboration, the finance part, the institutional support part, the infrastructure support, de-risking the entire, and scaling up production at the same time. And one point more is about, all will get motivated if livelihood is involved with it. Nobody will take tech if there is no benefits, economic benefit to anybody. So tech will only go forward if there is economic benefit to it, and everybody that is using will first see, we as Indians, we first see that what's the economic benefit out of it. So that is some of the points that I wanted to put forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saharia. I will now throw the floor open for any questions that any audience has from any of the panelists here today. But, you know, talking a little bit on your point of the most vulnerable group. So I come from Pauri Garhwal, and a lot of villages near my village are ghost villages. And I happen to be a daughter of a forest officer who struggles every year with forest fires that are getting bad to worse. As a result of which, people have to flee the areas because the land is not fertile anymore. There is no hope for a better future, and people are leaving and they're not coming back, leaving those entire villages abandoned. And that is a vulnerable community, Pahari community of this country, which is also very often talked about, especially during fire season, June, July, when we hear of forest fires getting too big to contain. But there's no conversation otherwise. But going back to what Chhaya was pointing out, it is a circle of soil, food, land, and that resultantly uplifts people or uproots them. In this case, it's uprooting them entirely from their own native land and pushing them out to urban areas and plains like Dehradun and adjacent areas. But there is an example here of something that I've felt personally growing up in that Pahari region, and I'm sure there are a lot of personal experiences that you have. Please feel free to take a mic and ask a question. We have the panelists here. Yes. A mic here in the front, please.
Hello. I'm Ajit, founder Khushigram, working on sustainable development goals. And I have been here for more than 2 decades now, Delhi Sustainable Development Summit and World Sustainable Development Summit. My point is, can we create a coalition? We have many MOUs also here often. So can we create a coalition and look at some areas, maybe some blocks or some parts of the city, which are really vulnerable? You said talked about the last mile. Everybody talked in similar vein. So can we take a place and see that we are able to, say, saturate the relevant sustainable development goals, targets, and the problems of that area? Thank you.
Anyone like to take that? Yes, sir. You have the mic.
So, no, I think this, it is as much as anything, the answer is collaboration. And it is both, if I simplify this, it is both the public-private and also private-private. I'll just give you one example. We started working on a microgrid project maybe 5 years back, just about 5 years back. And the problem to solve was to make microgrid sustainable. We incubated that in pockets in UP, Bahraich, some pockets in Bihar. I don't know whether you were referring to the biofuel in some of our biogrid. So I'll also reference that as well. Now, to make this viable, it is absolutely, at the end of it, is a social problem to solve. And the social problem to solve is, how are we integrating the value of the commercial enterprise of a village? So this sustainability of a microgrid will only come when the social structure is integrated. So socio-financial structure of the village will make the microgrid viable. So you have to work with the microcredit organization, leading consumer durable organizations, the Atta Chakki, the other small micro enterprises that operate. And then you're also looking at creating a mechanism by which the social programs are connected with other corporates who are doing on the ground. It is absolutely a collaboration work. So for example, today, we as, while we ourselves are large, we are big in our own right in terms of the work we do, we are partnering within the Tata ecosystem and outside the Tata ecosystem as well. So this absolutely, to your point, this cannot be done without the spirit of collaboration, especially whenever I take a corporate lens.
I hope that answers your question. A mic here, please. Sir, yes, sir, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Pavan. My question is direct to Madam Chhaya. You mentioned about the, in fact, biogas or gobar gas plant example from Uttar Pradesh. Just to remind, in fact, this was a subsidized based scheme which was in Uttar Pradesh in late 70s and 80s. And post that, it was not a successful scheme, and farmers, in fact, even those farmers who had, in fact, this biogas plant in their houses, they are literally, they are not in use. They have never been used for that matter. It's a fact on the ground. Now, in between, after that, after the coming of the current government, government came with a policy of your Ujjwala gas. Now, if you see the cost benefit from the point of view of the, in fact, rural consumers, why they will go for the, in fact, this biogas plant, in comparison, they are getting the Ujjwala gas cylinder on subsidized rate as well as free also. Don't you think there's a contradiction between the policy and the actual implementation, or the, in fact, the key objectives which, in fact, the whole of the government approach is missing? Thank you.
I definitely agree that there is a need to align the policies much better. And we've seen some great examples of policy sort of adjustments. For example, last year, the Natural Farming Mission allows for the creation of bio-input resource centers and subsidies for that itself. So there may be a contradiction in the implementation of something. For instance, a subsidized biogas plant has the right intention on the ground, and a policy subsidy that is actually making that available has the right goal, which is that you're solving several things at the same time. You know, you're solving a soil problem, an access to energy problem, and you're taking care of the methane emissions, you know, in a very sustainable manner. Many goals are being met. But when we look at the implementation, and which is why behavior change and what Himalji and Prachi, everyone's saying, is that how you actually implement that unit on the ground, the capacities you build, the extra solutions you build around that. So if you just build a biogas unit and leave, chances are that it's not going to be implemented well. If you handhold, you develop some change agents on the ground, they understand how it is, you provide some post-implementation service, the chances of that unit surviving for a long time are much higher. The problem we have right now is a supply-driven implementation in which everybody meets their goals. An NGO meets their goals, the government meets their goals, the panchayat, whoever. But the reality is, on the ground, these things remain pilots because the efficiency of that doesn't increase. So one of the behavior change plea for action that I have is for anybody working in the development sector, you know, stay at least 2 years after the implementation of something to see how that's working, so that these alignments between different policy incentives can actually deliver the multiple co-benefits that we are all after. And once again, I keep saying the water crisis is a major crisis, and energy has a way to either solve it or make it worse. So how we approach these two ideas together is going to be a very critical way of addressing things on the ground.
Thank you for that. Yes, who has the mic? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is to Chhaya ma'am. Ma'am, we in the NABARD, I'm from NABARD. We in NABARD, we are funding this PM Kusum scheme that you mentioned, because in this scheme, we are replacing these diesel pumps with solar pumps. And you made an observation that it is leading to more extraction of groundwater, which in turn creating more problem rather than solving the problem. But in our observations, because we also monitor these projects, we found that the use of technology, since farmer has got this new technology, and these solar pumps can even be controlled by apps. So sitting at the comfort of their homes, they can switch on and switch off the solar pumps. And that way it is leading to less use of water, first. And second, we also conducted a small study. In that study, we found that there was no significant change in the cropping pattern, like shifting to the water guzzling crops. And there was no major change in extraction of more groundwater. So when you made that observation, is it that you have conducted some study, or is it a general observation? That is my first question. And my second question is, we in the house, it might be a little controversial, but please take it in a good intent. We made an appeal in the house that can we just skip the non-veg food that is cooked just outside. So coming up with such appeals suddenly, won't it result in wastage of that food that has already been cooked first? And second part is,
Can I
although it is
answer
good
your
that-
second question first?
Let me complete, ma'am.
Sure.
Second part of the same, continuing to the same, that it is good that we, under the life mission also, we appeal to the common population that let us reduce our carbon footprint. That is fine, but won't it lead to reduction in our economic progress? Because economic progress, to some extent, although it is wrong, it is measured by GDP. If we reduce our footprints, and it will reduce our GDP growth. So how can we balance that? That is my second
Lots of
question. Thank
questions.
you.
What's your name, sir?
I am Rohit, ma'am.
Rohit, if you were listening to some of the conversations we were having, at no point were we hoping to compromise our GDP to lead to a better future. In fact, it was the opposite. Prachi talked about easy ways to reduce your carbon footprint while also going about your daily lives. I think it's imperative to understand we cannot at this point in time compromise on our growth and progress. This has been a fundamental question at the heart of whose goal it is to lead us to a zero carbon destiny. It cannot alone be developing countries because we have been historically disadvantaged. So therefore, what we can do is perhaps use more sustainable methods, and which is what we were discussing. I'll give it to Prachi in a bit. I don't think there was an appeal to not eat non-vegetarian food. I think there was a question which was raised on how you can reduce your carbon footprint, and one of the ways is don't eat non-vegetarian food if at all you want to. Don't waste the non-vegetarian food cooked outside. Please eat as much as you like. Prachi.
Hello, yeah. Well, it's a good thing we didn't have many people raise their hands anyway on giving up on non-vegetarian food today. So, but the idea is demand-side mitigation, right? So we should still ensure that the food is not wasted, but maybe it sends a message that there's lesser demand at World Sustainable Development Summit for non-vegetarian food because there's so many people who want to take climate action. On to your last point, sir, I think this is something I always want to keep saying, especially to young people, is that we have only 30 years to avoid the worst effects of climate change. But that's not just a risk. When I was in school, I used to read in history books about freedom fighters and innovators, scientists, change makers. I used to think, I'm born in such boring times. I should have been born then. But today, after so many years of working on climate action, I realized that we find ourselves at the cusp of our youth and at the cusp of our careers in perhaps some of the most defining decades of human existence. And that, our actions today are going to determine the lives of generations to come is not only a responsibility, it's an opportunity. Climate action is an opportunity because essentially what we have to do is we have to redefine the way the world functions in the next few decades. And that brings a new set of opportunities for economies to thrive. So organizations that take lead in taking climate action today are going to be leaders of the new millennium. Countries that take climate action seriously, switch to renewables now, have the opportunity to become the green energy capital of the world. And individuals who take climate action in their day-to-day lives and works have the opportunity to thrive not only in their life, but also in their careers. So, there's lots of careers in climate. There's a way to have a lucrative career if you're working in this field. There's a way to make profits while being sustainable. So we do it not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's the profitable and the lucrative thing to do. And maybe there is a short period of time where we see a slump in certain sections of the economy, but that will adjust to itself because the world anyway keeps changing. We are building a new world, and those who take climate action now will, I promise you, also find financial and economic benefits, and it will not be at the cost of moving forward.
All right. Yeah, do you want to? Yes?
I'll quickly say, and we can talk about this after the session as well. Yes, we have looked at studies that have said we've not ourselves conducted a study, but our own work in Bahrain showed a statistic that when you install solar power pumps in a place which has arsenic on the ground, you're actually pumping more of it and actually creating a more systemic issue into the food chain. So that's until you analyze where the solar pumps are actually being installed, One issue is just the quality of water that you're bringing up. Secondly, in the way farmers manage, there's a lot of capacity building and access to smartphones, et cetera, that needs to be had that presents its own challenges. And the groundwater abstraction, until we fundamentally look at a regenerative practice or agroecological intervention at an agri-systems level, just providing solar panels to continue to grow rice is not a smart, even a GDP solution. It's not a smart solution because fertilizers, water, methane, etc. So this is actually this is at the hub of what I feel as a development person is the crux of the problem. Everybody in different departments works to deliver their agendas, which is wonderful, and those agendas have been created for a good reason. So if your task is in NABARD to make sure that solar is provided in the hands of a farmer, extremely important. But can we be working alongside other people who are working on, let's say the, pollution, water pollution, as well as groundwater levels, groundwater boards, all the other guys, like I said, food, energy, water nexus. If we can work alongside them, we can plan in advance so that we are not reactive, we are proactive about our energy planning. That actually I think is extremely important.
All right, yes. Can we have the mic here, please? Who has the mic?
Hello, my name is Pankaj Patel. I'm from Green Sikka Foundation. Shweta, your question to Prachi, how do you offset your travel from one sector to another sector? There is no ready solution. If you want to become carbon neutral citizen, you need to forecast your lifestyle. How many times in a month you will take domestic flight, or how many times you fly internationally, and based on that, you have to estimate the potential CO2 footprint because of anticipated of your lifestyle, and provide, and you should work on the solution matrix to offset that. So all climate action cannot be prompt, There are some legacy issue from childhood to this age of your life. What is the liability you have created? You can also make a mathematical model of your life, and you can forecast your life expectancy and your lifestyle, and also make a plan how to make carbon neutral life of yours. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir. Yes, I think we'll have to take the last question if you can pass on the mic there, yes.
So I'm Dr. Ramesh, President of Institution of Green Engineers and Professor at Dr. MGR Education Research Institute. Prachi, appreciate you. Yesterday your name was referred by the TERI sir here, and I installed your app. It was very nice, fantastic. I am also suggesting another one option which we are in progress. We call it as N-Save 9 mantra. So this simple 9 mantra, if anyone across the globe they can implement, they can save 1 unit per day at home. So the concept is saving 1 unit equal to generating 2 unit, and saving 1 unit equal to saving 1.3 kilogram carbon dioxide, and also which will be equivalent to 720 liter of water saving. So the idea, simple idea, switch off the equipments after use, regular cleaning of regular cleaning of AC filter, use star rated equipments, use of LED study lamp, regular cleaning of the refrigerator per month, usage of heavy equipment in off-peak hours, avoid leaving the equipment in standby mode, optimal temperature setting, and the last one, the replace the maximum utilized LED with a solar LED. Only the last mantra is little finance involved, remaining all the 8 mantra is
right.
It is
So
not
do you have
involved.
Copies of that?
Yes, yes.
We would love to distribute
yes,
that.
No, yes, ma'am.
Is there
so
a
the
question?
idea behind this is that we had already implemented this concept through the 35 engineering colleges in India. We created a club called Energy Saving Club. So through this club, we are motivating the students, and the students will go to the residents and change the attitude of the home. Rightly pointed out by the whole members, the attitude of the home which we are thoughting, that change will come automatically. Not only the energy, they will go for plastic, they will go for the water, all kind of that changes is going on. And we call this as the project called Energy 99 Challenge. A particular student will go to 99 home, they have to complete the project, and presently this project is also indexed by United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. The project ID is STG Action 48555. So this is what I would like to, and thank you so much for the panelists.
Thank you,
for
sir.
providing that.
Thank you.
Amazing. Every time I come here, I feel like I take back inspiration for the 9 months to come until we come to WSDS again. So thank you so much for the work you do. And even you, sir, when I asked the question on who's taking action, you raise your hand, you were the first to raise your hand even before I finished asking my question. So this is the kind of enthusiasm we want to see. So thank you. A big shout out to the audience for being action takers.
Thank you so much, Prachi. Thank you very much, everyone, for being very patient audience. With this, we've come to the end of this session. Leapfrogging into a future that is greener than what it is today requires effort, requires participation, and requires collaboration. I think this room and the bunch of people who are out here, determined, ready to take action, ready to drive change, and the passion that I see in some of you, I think this needs to be multiplied, and it needs to be multiplied at far greater levels for us to be really seeing some sort of change in behavior, in action, in attitude, starting tomorrow. So I think the idea of this forum, of course, is not that we are going to sit in a room and drive change, but the idea, of course, is to hear each other, collaborate, get to know what we're doing, and drive home a point that it only takes a bunch of people to really bring about a change. And I think we're all capable of doing that in this August House. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you to our moderator and panelists for this informative and important discussion. Can I have you all to the front, please, for a brief photo op? Oh my God. May I request the audience to please stay? The session's not yet wrapped up. We have a small 10-minute segment still left. We will break for lunch in another 10 minutes, so I request the audience to please stay back. Can we have a round of applause for our speakers here? We are now excited to announce a fellowship grant under the Atal Innovation Mission. The fellowship grant from the Royal Norwegian Embassy in New Delhi aims to accelerate community innovations in battery energy storage. I would like to call upon stage now Mr. Himanshu Joshi, Program Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog, to introduce us to the structure of the fellowship program.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I know I'm standing between you and the lunch. Will not take more than 10 minutes, I promise. The good part is there's no Q&A here, so that will not extend the 10 minutes, so it's all in my control. So I come from an organization called Atal Innovation Mission, which is a flagship mission of Government of India housed within Niti Aayog, which probably everybody would know, erstwhile called the Planning Commission. So along with the Norwegian Embassy, right, we've just launched last month itself this challenge to support battery innovation. Next slide. So there's only one slide here. Whoever is controlling the screen. Yeah. When we met people at the Norwegian Embassy, right, and the conversation was going on to do something related to energy, green, and this is, I think, the larger theme with most of the Nordic countries, right? We work with Denmark, Sweden also on similar issues, right? And when they presented us this idea of something which is related to battery innovation, right? The next challenge for us was which states do we sort of select, right? And they had a limit of about 5 states. The person inside me said, let's take Northeast because that will take 7 states, right? So we still had 4 more left. So we picked up the bigger ones, right? We picked up UP, we picked up Rajasthan, we picked up Punjab, we picked up Haryana. The reason being that one of the programs that we do at Atal Innovation Mission is also on grassroots innovation, right? And a lot of entries that we kind of see through the last couple of years is come from some of these areas, right? Not the areas which traditionally are more known for innovation, which is the southern part of the country, right? So simple challenge, it's a grant-based thing where our incubators, so Atal Innovation Mission runs about 100 odd incubators in the country, which are given grants by Government of India. So we selected one incubator in each state, and we asked them to kind of scout through applications, right? We received about 110 applications about 21 days, right? And we've done the first round of shortlisting. The idea is to reach out to 10 final applications who will then be given some grants to develop these ideas further, right? Where the idea is that they will present their final prototype, idea, whatever you want to call it, in September. Now, while going through, and TERI was a partner in this, while going through, we actually got really good entries, right? People in grassroots, which is innovation labs, which is your incubators, which is just normal students like us, right? When I say students, may not necessarily mean people studying in a university or a school. They've been thinking about what kind of materials should we use. They've been thinking about, similar to the apps that you were talking about, right? How can an app kind of calculate what kind of energy requirement is there for their local communities? Because the end outcome that were very clear, both us, TERI and Norwegian Embassy, measure the impact that this idea is going to create for the larger community that they're coming from, right? So it's not that an idea from UP should start impacting something in South India. We want them to impact the community that they live in, right? So we had people thinking about app, we had people thinking about the materials that they use, we had thinking about people how battery can be leveraged to improve the economic situation of their area, because they may have a lot of battery cuts, right? So this is a brief about the idea. Hopefully, I think by the time we come back, as she's talked about next year, we'll be able to present some really good ideas, right? So that's from me, right? I did good on time, right? Yeah. Sure.
I would now like to request Ms. Elizabeth Strand-Victor, Counselor for Science, Technology and Higher Education at the Royal Norwegian Embassy in India, to please come up on stage. Along with Mr. Joshi, Ms. Victor and Dr. Ajit Kumar Singh, Associate Fellow at TERI, please come on stage for a photo op, along with our panelists on stage. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of this enlightening session. A heartfelt thank you to all our speakers for their valuable insights, to our moderator for steering the discussion, and to our engaged audience for the participation. Lunch has been served in the hub area, so please help yourselves and join us back here at 2:30 p.m. for the high-level plenary.